Hello and welcome to True Crime Diary, in which we look back through the annals of true crime to discuss events that took place on this week in history. I'm your host Mark Decano, and with me as always are my friends Jed Lester.
Hello.
And Rue Turner.
Hello.
We want your reviews. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a review and preferably 5 stars. And if not, you can always email your review to us at stuff@truecrimediary.co.uk or through our Facebook page or Instagram account. And links to all of those are available on our website www.truecrimediary.co.uk. And in appreciation of every 5-star review, we'll give you a shout out in a future episode. So the date we're looking at this week is January the 15th, and in 1947 the body of a young woman was found stripped naked and cut clear in half in a parking lot in Los Angeles. The woman's name was Elizabeth Short, but she's become known worldwide as the Black Dahlia.
I don't want to be the bad guy who points out the error this early in the game, but it wasn't a parking lot. It was a housing lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah.
There's a lot of lots in LA.
It's just a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like in Back to the Future when he turns up and there's that huge grey open plain with roads but no houses on it.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those.
They build
the roads first.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
I don't know.
Not a very private place for a murder?
Just little point of order. Which half? Was it length?
Both. Oh.
Which half? Both?
Was she chopped in half, or was she chopped in half lengthways?
Lengthways. That would have been extraordinary. No, she was cut in half across the waist.
Or
magician style.
Magician style.
What's the other style?
Yeah.
Laurel and Hardy in a car style.
Yeah.
Right, she was in...
Cut across the waist. Actually, there's a medical procedure, apparently, where you cut someone in half at the waist.
Because you have to.
Well, you do it to a chicken.
They don't do it, not for a laugh. They do it for, they have to. It's called a hemicorporectomy.
Right.
Wow.
So basically, cutting a body in half in Latin.
Yeah. Well, it's also known rather crudely as a halfectomy.
A halfectomy.
That's just for an idiot's version, isn't it?
They cut them in half and then put some Latin on the end.
Corp, as in corporeal.
Body.
Yeah.
What's the other bit?
Ectomy.
Erectomy. No, ectomy.
Ecto. Yeah, ectoplasm. That's when you get a
half-ectomy.
In hemisphere.
What's a whole ectomy?
Yeah.
Is that no?
Ectomy.
They don't cut your hole out, do they?
A whole ectomy.
Go on then, tell us about Elizabeth and why, or perhaps we don't know the reason why, but tell us about her.
It's quite a dramatic vision, isn't it? 2 halves of a young woman.
Is this a legendary story?
Yes, it is, yeah. It's become widely known.
Is it unsolved?
It is unsolved.
I'm just trying to work out why we're sitting round a table talking about her.
Well, so Elizabeth Short, she was a waitress in LA. So she's a 22-year-old. And yes, her body was found stripped naked, cut in half, and she had on her body, I
think it's what's known as a Glasgow smile.
Glasgow smile, that's it, yeah. Also known as a Chelsea grin.
Right.
So she was chopped
there.
Across the mouth, from the sides of the mouth up to the ears. So it's sort of like Heath Ledger's Joker.
Exactly, yeah.
Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them?
Someone who knows what they're talking about would know that if that was done first and then the hemicorpectomy was done, as opposed to the other way around.
If only if it was as simple as that. Those weren't the only cuts on her.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I thought
there were lots. No, there were lots of other cuts, lots of lacerations. Some of them were so deep they'd actually removed like scoops of flesh from the body.
Like the pinch marks at the bridge of the nose.
Oh God, really?
Yeah.
But she had some ill-fitting glasses.
Well, it's like something was put there to keep the nose closed.
Was she a synchronised swimmer? That's what they wear. So I'm changing the subject. So I've seen a picture of her.
Yeah.
And to me, it's because she's quite attractive, and to me, it may have been the case that she wasn't just a waitress. She was your classic also an actress kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going on the fact that the headshot is very good and, kind of professionally done.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't do any movies or any acting that we're aware
It's
of.
the classic.
But it's,
Get your photos done.
yeah, exactly. She's
That
aspiring.
town was full of waiting actors.
Yeah, exactly.
And the
still
bars
is.
that she hung out
Yeah.
in were.
And absolutely still is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The black and white photo that you'll commonly find of her looks like a shot from a movie.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
she's
yeah,
very
it's like really
striking
good.
and she could easily have been in a movie.
Yeah, and that photo was taken not long before she died.
Right. So she had aspiration for the movies.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what I found interesting about her life story, she was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and what I find the most interesting part of her life, not the nicest, but the most interesting, is that in 1929, her father, who ran a miniature golf course, he
used to install them, didn't he? Build
Yeah.
and install them for people.
he installed golf courses.
Do you mean crazy? What's the difference between miniature and crazy?
Crazy has like windmills and shit on it.
But that's...
Miniature is just very small. It's like a putting green, I guess.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I've lost interest in it.
Yeah.
What did you say? Crazy?
You're crazy. He's miniature.
Oh, is he?
So he's
It's not as interesting.
It's
it's not interesting at all.
miniature's much more pedestrian, isn't it?
A water wheel and a helter-skelter. kind of
Yeah,
South
miniature
European
is as boring as golf with all the long walks taken out of it, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I mean, to be fair, the time-consuming bit has been removed.
Like the exercise.
Hardly. It's just going for a wander.
I mean, not if they take the walks out, you know.
Well, I know. I'm talking about
If it's just
full-time
half a
golf.
dozen
Yeah.
short putts.
Massive golf. It should be the other way around. One should be called golf, and the other one should be called massive golf.
massive golf.
There's always a sale for that.
What?
There's always a
golf-
massive golf sale.
Yeah, there is, isn't there?
Well,
It's always massive, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or is it huge?
a massive, always
It's
massive.
always massive.
Yeah,
Large?
Average golf sale
Massive. Yeah, it's always massive.
very
isn't it?
weighty.
for massive golf.
Large golf. No, doesn't work like that, does it?
Giant golf.
Giant golf set. No, I've never seen that.
No.
Massive golf sale.
I mean, well, we're talking
Moderate
about
golf
America
sale.
here. They might call crazy golf miniature golf.
Yes,
all
you're
right.
right.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
true. Yeah,
That's crazy.
the guy is crazy. The golf is miniature.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Jeez, you love this golf stuff, huh?
So, 1929, Wall Street crash. He loses a lot of money. So the following year, he he leaves his car abandoned and he disappears.
On the bridge.
Everyone assumes that he's committed suicide
Leaves it by the bridge, doesn't he?
by the bridge. Yeah. So everyone assumes he's got out of the car, jumped into the river,
Yes.
to the water.
Washed away.
And he
And-
was massively in debt at the time.
I don't know about debt, but he certainly lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
So he would have been poor.
And his golf making business was
Gone out.
dried up.
Kaput.
Eh?
Hey.
Kaput.
Ka. There has to be a gap. Ka. And then you have to do the action.
Swinging motion.
And you
I'm
want
doing it now.
You want the sound of it
Ka.
rattling around the hole.
So he pretended to.
Yeah.
Oh, did he? Pretend?
Turns
I don't
out, yeah, he basically started a new life for himself. He wrote to her mother saying,
Yes.
"Look, really sorry, I was alive and well these last 12 years.
know. Oh, sorry. Right. So we're after this, right? okay.
Yeah, so I'm really sorry about that. I'm not dead.
Right.
I was just somewhere else."
Sure.
So now Elizabeth finds out she's got a father. She goes to live with him. She's there less than a month. They argue constantly. So she moved out.
What year? Sorry. What year are we now?
December of 1942. So she's 18. She moves in with her dad in California
For that quick
for
month.
less than a month.
Yeah.
She moved in briefly with an Air Force sergeant. Apparently he was abusive. So she moved to Santa Barbara. She was arrested there. Now, this is why they were later able to identify from her fingerprints, because she got arrested for drinking, because she would have been 18
Took her.
and
Yeah.
is underage in the US. They sent her back to Boston, and instead she went to Florida. And while she was in Florida, she met an officer, an Air Force officer, Major Matthew Gordon Jr. Now, he was going to be deployed to the Pacific, because this
That's
is
right.
World War II, yeah? Now, she apparently claimed that while he was recovering from a plane crash, he wrote to her saying and proposing marriage, and that she had accepted. But unfortunately, he then crashed his plane again.
Oh, bother.
He died the second time he crashed.
Right. Okay.
And that was just literally like a week before the war ended. He died.
God.
Yeah.
That's tough, isn't it?
So, So by July 1946, she's now moved to Los Angeles. So now she's in LA 6 months before she dies. And at that point, she's working as the waitress. She's staying living on Hollywood Boulevard in a room behind a nightclub. That's pretty much her story, what we know about her. We should point out, for the benefit of the global audience, that we said it was pronounced Black Dahlia, but only in America. The rest of the English-speaking world call it Dahlia.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Yes, I must admit.
Which is a flower.
That swayed me. So it's a black flower. Yeah, right.
Black flower, yeah.
Right, sorry, I didn't even...
So in Canada,
I haven't
Australia,
seen it written down.
England, it's called a Dahlia.
Yes, it's a dahlia.
And in America, it's a Dahlia.
Right, oh, okay. Oh, we haven't... Why is she called that?
Well...
Oh, no, it's not her, is it? It's the case.
She is called the Black Dahlia.
Okay.
Now, there's lots of theories about why that may be. The main one is that the year before, there was a noir movie came out with Alan Ladd in it called The Blue Dahlia, which is basically a crime story with quite a lot of plot twists in it. So people have suggested that, but reality is that the newspapers made it up to make it sound more
is their
interesting.
want.
Yeah.
Why?
Originally, it was called when they first reported it, they called it the werewolf murder because of the nature of the attack.
Right. Okay.
But then they quickly changed it to the Black Dahlia. It's been called that ever since.
You can visualise what might have... I know it's horrendous, but
Yeah.
visualise what might have happened to her.
Yeah.
Must be a
But
werewolf
black-
she was
Yeah,
torn
werewolf.
into.
Black Dahlia
Cleaved
doesn't
in
kind
twain.
of suggest anything, does it?
No. Well, she had dark hair and she was pretty.
She was known to wear dark clothes.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
Well, again, pretty much everything. You know nothing, but pretty much anything that anyone has ever heard about the story was made up by the
Do they
newspaper.
have black flowers? That's not a natural thing, is it?
There
They
are
do
black
at
flowers.
gothic weddings.
I know that, but
There are black
Or
flowers.
goth
There aren't
weddings.
many.
goth. I know.
Yeah.
There aren't. That's just not a natural.
I don't know if there's a Black Dahlia, but again, they just made it up. Dark hair, possibly black clothes. But this is 1947, so this is William Randolph Hearst, the newspaper magnate. A couple of his
it's in black and
papers,
white.
it's in black and white. A couple of his newspapers came up with really quite salacious gossip and read it out and printed it as news. You know,
Right.
so just to keep the story going, they kept it going for
To make
like
it
35
more
weeks or something like that.
Sensational.
Yeah.
Sensational, yeah, exactly, yeah. One of Hearst's newspapers, I think it was the Examiner, got hold of Short's mother in Boston and told her that her daughter had won a beauty contest and started to interview her to get all the personal details. And only when they got what they thought they needed did they tell her that actually her daughter had been murdered.
Christ almighty, that is awful.
Yeah.
An atmosphere in which the unscrupulous revel.
And then they offered to pay for her to go to Los Angeles so that she could help the police with the investigation. But what they did was they kept her as far away from the police as they could so that they could keep hold of their story, keep it isolated. So,
that it wouldn't be revealed as the horror of deception that it was.
Well, yeah, so that they all the source information about the family and all the background details were exclusive to the Examiner. No one else could get the story. So they isolated her completely. So
That's absolutely
the worst kind of journalist. Yeah.
We'll do this. Yeah, we'll definitely do this idea.
So yeah, they
You
just
fly
scam.
over. Yeah, I agree. Oh, bloody Nora, that's terrible.
Nothing's changed in
Well, yeah. It's got
The,
news of the world written all over
70 years.
So anyway, where did the police investigation begin?
Well, with the autopsy.
I tried to get a copy of that.
Of course you did, yeah. What?
It's
I wrote
well,
to
it's
the mum.
I- well,
Said,
She's won a lovely body competition. Can I have it?
emphasis on
no,
body.
it's still closed.
It's still closed.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
really?
still closed. Yeah,
Wow, this is like
because
70 years later.
Yeah, well, normally they are open.
As opposed
Like
to
you can read, you can read Belushi's, but you can't read hers because hers is still a closed case. Sorry, an open case. So
Right,
you can't.
okay.
So you can't.
So the autopsy is
get
closed
access.
because the case is open. So the autopsy also revealed a couple of things. Firstly, that all the blood had been removed / drained.
What's the
from
word
a-
for that?
Removed. Exsanguination.
That's the one.
Quite a nice
Been
word.
exsanguinated.
Yeah, it's a lovely word.
Sadly.
Unfortunately, it's a lovely word.
I'll tell you what's a lovely word. What was it again?
Exsanguination.
Exsanguination.
Which makes it sound like you just removed a monkey.
Wow, that's neat.
Get that monkey out of here.
Did that monkey just come out your crack, man?
So it's more of a vampire murder than a
Once
werewolf
it's not-
murder.
Once the blood isn't pumping, it will start to coagulate.
Yes.
So the fact that if most of the blood was removed, that has
But
to
she had
be-
loads of little...
Yeah, but it have to
cuts.
have made an effort to remove all the blood.
Yeah, because it would just
It would
clot.
just clot,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Even though she was...
Because it'll only
Definitely
it'll
dead.
only pump out while the heart's pumping.
Of course, yeah.
Once she did, then that's it. It'll stop and it'll just turn to like jelly.
That's a job, isn't it? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds as if it is.
it takes a lot of plastic and tubs, and I mean the cleanup is horrible.
Right. Okay.
I should also mention that the body in the lot had been posed as well. So,
okay.
so you've got the upper half of the body.
Which is the only bit... Oh, no, they have got both
They've got
bits.
both halves.
Right, okay.
So they're separated by a. I was going to say a foot, but they didn't cut off a foot and put it in the middle. And so it was about 12-inch, 30 centimetre odd gap between the two halves, and then the arms were up across her chest and over her face, hands on her face,
Meaning it was deliberately...
deliberately posed.
And
yeah,
then rigor mortis had kept it.
kept it. Yeah, yeah. And then the bottom half, where the in the viscera, the intestines had come out, had been tucked underneath the buttocks of the legs portion. It had been arranged. The body had been arranged, so it had been exsanguinated, bisected, and then arranged on the floor and washed with petrol, gasoline,
It's
All
not
right.
really washed, is
That's
it?
a
to remove.
Yeah,
It's
I'm just
that's
going for a
evidence
wash.
removing. isn't it?
forensic counter.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I was going to say, I'm just going for a wash and some petrol.
Quick petrol wash.
We might need another wash after that. Right, okay, I see what you mean. To get rid of all
Yeah, I mean,
the
if you ever got
air.
petrol or gasoline on your hands, it takes days to get it off. You know?
Yeah, and that's just after filling up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just getting a drop off the handle. You know?
Right, okay, so this is serious covering up
Yeah.
Uppington,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Covering
That's
Uppington.
a word.
Sure, why not? Yeah, it's proper. It's proper.
So this
Not
is
proper.
I mean, let's face it, all the, kind of Jack the Ripper-y victims were horrendously attacked, I suppose you would describe it.
Yeah.
But the overriding thing from that, unsolved thing in history is Jack the Ripper, as opposed to
Yeah.
the hideousness of what was done. Is this kind of the same thing? But people, I don't know whether they gloss over the horrendous things that were done to her
Yeah.
because the intrigue has taken over.
Yeah, I mean, well, the newspapers, as I said, they went to great lengths to make it to keep the story in the headlines, so that any salacious details that they could include or indeed make up, they did.
They would do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Why, they write the silliest things in the newspapers.
and of course, because the case was unsolved,
You can
that's
say it.
like
You
times
kind of
10.
say
It's
it,
like,
isn't
yeah.
it? So,
Like the people who know about the Zodiac killer, because he was never
Yeah.
found. So that's another example. It's
is that
kept
the one
in.
that was never... Oh yes, it wasn't. I'm thinking of. One of them was recently found. I can't remember.
They
Golden. No.
somebody claimed
Scrambled.
to have recently solved one of the Zodiac killer's riddles. But I don't know if that turned out to be true or not.
What dries, the more it gets wet. Oh yeah.
Clearly, the workings of a madman.
When is the door not a door?
Or has 2 legs, 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening.
So technically, the reason why we are talking about this is because the media at the time strung it along and potentially heightened certain elements of the story, made up certain other elements of the story,
Yeah.
and that's basically why we're sitting round the table like madmen.
Well, exactly.
70 years later.
Well, to give you a taste of the treatment that she got, bearing in mind that this is a murdered victim. Okay. The kind of treatment that she got was when she was last seen about 6-7 days before her body was discovered. She was wearing apparently like a black suit. Okay. Now the newspapers, like the Examiner, described it as a tight skirt and a sheer blouse.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So of course they did.
Yeah. They referred to her not as a waitress but as an adventuress. And she would prowl Hollywood Boulevard. Well, she didn't prowl. She lived. She
walked from there to there. But
yeah, exactly.
That's prowling. Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, they seem to be mostly preoccupied with what her vagina's getting up to than anything else. She was described variously as a prostitute. She was a lesbian. She's frigid. She's pregnant. All sorts of things. I mean, it's unconscionable that the authorities and people in the media would be concerned with women's reproductive organs these days.
Yeah. Was any of that true?
No.
Why would they do that? Why wouldn't they concentrate on... Well, perhaps they did concentrate on who the victim was by trying to out various... We'll obviously come into that. But why would they go bang on and bang on and bang on about...
Because I don't know. Because it's a sordid, underworldly type.
A newspaper's fundamental purpose is to sell today's newspaper. Yeah. That's it. It has no other purpose. It's not to inform. It's not to educate. It's to sell the newspaper.
Yeah.
So if you can put something on the front page that sells that newspaper today, well, you'll worry about tomorrow's newspaper tomorrow.
Sure,
yeah. Exactly.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. You can retract it if you have to.
Yeah, sure.
So obviously the police were kind of up against it because they had nothing. They had a dead body. That her family's all far away. They didn't have a lot to go on. There was a witness that saw her. Witnesses at the Biltmore Hotel saw her in the lobby making a phone call about 6 days before her body was found.
You're not talking about the murder case at the Biltmore Hotel tonight, are you?
She was witnessed nearby in a like a grill, like a restaurant.
Diner. Yep.
Diner, yeah. And then nothing for 6 days, and then her body is discovered in this appalling condition. But they didn't have a lot to go on, and obviously there was the gasoline wiping down all the forensics.
Yes.
She was identified by her. She managed to get identified by her fingerprints.
Okay.
Do we have a time of death? It might be. I don't know how difficult it is with that kind of body.
Well, they suggested that she'd been killed about 10 hours before.
Okay. So fairly recent. So she hadn't been kept
early that morning or the late the previous day. But obviously, if she might have been, because of the nature of her injuries, she might well have been kept for some time.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
So then, on 21st, 6 days later, 21st January, somebody phoned the editor of the Examiner and congratulated him on the coverage of the case.
Very nice. Very nice job. Congratulations.
And said he was going to turn himself in, but not before he allowed the police to pursue him some more. And he said, expect some souvenirs of Beth Short in the mail.
Right.
3 days after that, someone who was working for the Postal Service found a large manila envelope addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. So broadly addressed. And obviously the letters had all been cut out of the magazines.
Am I right in understanding that letter, with the cut-out letters, was also wiped down with gasoline?
Yes. But it said here is Dahlia's belongings, letter to follow. And in the envelope there was her birth certificate. There were some photos. There were scraps of paper with names written on and business cards, that sort of thing. And an address book with the name Mark Hansen embossed on it.
And the birth certificate was real?
It was real. It was hers, yeah.
So that arrived at the LA Examiner?
Well, it was discovered by the post office.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
So the police used the book, the Mark Hansen lead.
Yes,
they went through, they questioned everyone in the address book,
yeah.
and they found him and they questioned him. Mm-hmm. And although there were people in the book that she had interacted with,
right,
they didn't find any connection or any. He was exonerated, and so was everyone else in the book. So it meant nowhere. The best lead, it didn't go in.
Oh. Arrest anybody who smells of gasoline. That's what.
Yeah, exactly.
A saw in his.
Yeah. Anyone with a penchant for magicians' tricks and smells of gasoline. Wasn't there? Am I right in thinking there was in a hotel room there was some girl's clothing all covered in blood and wrapped up in brown paper.
There's a handbag and a shoe were found that had been washed with gasoline.
And the hotel or motel room.
They were found on a dumpster. They weren't in there.
Right, and the motel room had been washed. Like, well, it was cleaned down by the person who was meant to clean the rooms.
Right.
But they had been, if I'm remembering this rightly, they had been caught for something or other by the police in the last few days, and they, like, for abuse or for battery or something like that.
I don't know this.
And they, when they discovered the room was covered in blood, they just thought, well, I'm not calling the police because
right,
this is not going to go down well for me. So I'll just clean it up.
Well, also the petrol thing's obviously quite a good idea, and I'm assuming
you're going to keep that idea.
Put that in your pocket.
Loads of people are going, it's a great idea, and they would have started doing that. And they would have started seeing that more and more.
Yeah, it breaks down lipids, doesn't it? So the fingerprints don't stick. And
just don't do it.
No, just don't chop them up.
Just be nice to everyone.
Yeah,
please.
Be nice.
Yeah.
Please.
Why can't we all just get along?
Just be nice.
I just wish we could all get along like we used to in middle school.
On March the 14th, what they found was a pile of men's clothing on the beach with a letter tucked into the shoe. And the letter said, "To whom it may concern, I've waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I'm too much of a coward to turn myself in, so this is the best way out for me. I couldn't help myself for that or this. Sorry, Mary." They didn't find out who it belonged to. They didn't find anything.
And it was on the beach, suggesting
he'd.
But that doesn't mean
it was a suicide. No,
Right.
But could have been
just some clothes.
Just a pile of clothes.
Yeah.
Could have been anything. Could have been a prank. They didn't identify who it belonged to.
Of course, yeah, right. Okay.
Well, we know who it belonged to.
Do you?
Yeah.
Who's that then?
Reginald Perrin.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That's going to be lost on most of our listeners.
It is.
I could barely find it myself.
Guys, just Google 70s British comedies. Well, anyway, he didn't do it.
No.
No.
So hang on, are you suggesting
Leonard
crack
Rossiterton?
That was to sidetrack everyone.
Well, I mean, he's as likely a suspect as anyone else they talked to.
Right.
Yeah.
They had 750 investigators on the case. It was one of the largest investigations in that period.
Working for the whoever.
For the LAPD and the sheriff's departments.
Wow.
See, I never believe those kind of figures because I can't possibly conceive that there is a room with 700 people in it working on it.
Oh, they weren't all in the room.
No, I get that.
They weren't all like
but I just think
shoulder to shoulder.
All it probably means is 700 people have at some point clocked some hours or an hour against that project.
Yeah. But likewise, some would have been on it from the day one until the day.
I'm sure.
So they would have put in hundreds.
Some
of
of them would have been.
And some people just handed out flyers. Call for witnesses.
Or went and got coffee for the guys that were reading the papers about it that morning.
And a donut.
That's important.
One of the members of the city council posted a reward for information.
Good. Yeah.
And $10,000.
Wow.
Oh,
Which,
That's quite good now.
In 1947, so that'd be worth about 10 times that now.
Would it?
So 100 plus thousand.
That's a chunk of change, isn't it?
Chunk of change.
I thought you were going to say
Still good though.
I'd dob you in.
Yeah, for 10 grand, let alone it'd be 100.
Yeah.
Now, we know what happens when you post a reward for this.
Yeah, that is true. Yes.
I done it.
Everybody done it.
Yes.
I killed it.
That is absolutely bizarre, isn't it? As soon as the money comes up, actually, do you know what? This is probably worth potentially getting the death penalty over.
Yeah, I'll take 10 grand and an electric chair to go.
Yeah.
So there were definitely 60 confessions.
Well, they say confession's good for the soul.
But since then, there's been 500 odd
Wow.
confessions. That was 60 at the time of the investigations, but since then, 500 people have claimed to have done it, including people who wouldn't even have been alive
Yes,
at the time.
who weren't born, yeah.
And of course, there's no reward now.
No reward, yeah.
So that
Mad as a bean.
And whoever may, so 47, so say for the sake of argument, the killer was born in 27, probably wasn't, then it'd be 110.
Yeah.
Right, so loads of people came forward, obviously.
Yeah.
That's so ridiculous, isn't it?
Yep.
people be crazy.
They had another letter to the examiner, handwritten this time instead of in letters, saying on 26th of January.
This could be someone else, not
Could be.
first bloke.
It was a short note. It said, "Here it is, turning in Wednesday, Jan 29th, 10 a.m.
Right.
Had my fun at police, Black Dahlia Avenger." It signed it. And he said he was going to be at this point and this time.
I was just about to say, did they write back? Whereabouts?
Where's that then?
So they had 40 police marksmen hiding in trees.
Yeah, they waited, and guess what?
Yeah, sure.
Didn't show up.
Or did he?
Or did he?
She.
She. But at 1 o'clock that day, they instead got another letter saying, "I've changed my mind. You wouldn't give me a square deal, but the Dahlia killing was justified." Nobody knows what he meant by that.
Okay. Right. Dunno.
So despite all the various claims and people and confessions, by the time we get to February, the Los Angeles Daily News said that the case had run into a stone wall. The Examiner, however, kept the story going for another 35 days.
Sure. For selling papers reasons.
Yeah.
I cannot accept half-baked theories that sell newspapers.
They tried to draw parallels, obviously, using victimology to sort of say, well, maybe there's another victim in similar circumstances.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And interestingly, one case that they tied it to was they tried to connect it to a Cleveland torso murder, which we've talked about briefly before. We mentioned it in our Thames torso episode. Which is the one I said that there are other torso murders elsewhere, and one of the more famous ones is the Cleveland one.
Yeah.
And that's the one I mentioned where the torsos were left facing the office of Elliot Ness, who was in charge of the investigation, because they're within a few years of one another.
Yep.
But they didn't get anywhere with that at all either. So that didn't work. They did find in February a murder in LA of another woman. They thought that might be connected because she was found nude and had been beaten quite badly. It had written on her stomach, was in lipstick, what looked like it had been written "fuck you BD," and they thought it was BD is Black Dahlia.
Of course, yeah.
But it actually probably said PD, meaning police department.
Right.
It just went, because that wouldn't make really much sense.
No, I don't know.
So they said it probably actually said, "fuck you PD."
BD's a bit obscure. Could be Bobby Davro.
Could be Barbara Dixon. And Elaine Page. Daddy. Could be
Brian Dennehy. Billy Dainty.
Oh, yeah.
Is that everyone? Interestingly, loads of people not only have confessed, but others have said that they knew someone who did it. And in fact, they've written books and got quite a lot of publicity out of it. Yeah.
I think there's probably more books than there were people who said that they did it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Steve Hodel was a crime author. He said that it's possible that his dad did it, who was a policeman.
To me, that seems like the most plausible person.
Well, he said that his dad was trained as a surgeon, therefore could have performed a half-ectomy.
But that was also a Jack the Ripper thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, they said he could have worked with a blade.
He was also a bit of a bent copper.
Yeah.
And he also was known for having, what does Berlusconi call them? His parties.
Oh, these called...
Bunga, yeah. And he had a gold room, as he called it, in his big house. Right. Where spurious sexual activities were supposed to go on.
Foreign listeners, what a bent copper is. I guarantee they don't know.
I don't know what the stateside term for bent copper is.
Well, cop is fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it means corrupt.
Yeah,
cop.
corrupt.
Police officer.
I'm only a poor corrupt official.
I think Hodel, or his father, Papa Hodel, I think his secretary went missing or was killed.
Yeah, there's also no evidence that she ever existed.
Well, there you go. Which, I mean,
so her
circumstantial
death
evidence
is
on the
widely exaggerated.
Well, yeah. But it was enough for investigators to put a wiretap on his house.
Ah.
And apparently they got recording of him saying something that, to me, doesn't sound incriminating at all. It sounds like he's literally saying, it wasn't me. He's recorded apparently as saying, supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now, they can't talk to my secretary because she's dead. All of which was true. But they use that as...
What, against him or to go...
to suggest that, you know...
Oh, okay.
I can see how the paper would use it, but it wouldn't stand in court. It's not...
Yeah. Well, they would do it like in the style of the headline. Did he confess? And then in the read the story, it'd say, no, he didn't.
They'd have to just ignore that very important first word. Supposing.
Yeah. In 1991, there was a woman who would have been 10 years old at the time of the murder, who claimed that her dad did it.
Okay.
In fact, he wrote a book about it called Daddy Was the Black Dahlia Killer. And in that, she claimed that her dad molested her. But her stepsister said it was rubbish, nonsense, utter nonsense.
I mean,
so
might not have been.
But who knows?
There's a sad story in there somewhere.
Yeah, well, she was 10 years old, and she said that she saw her father beating the Black Dahlia. But she wrote about it in the 90s.
Right.
I've even seen EVM, I'm doing air quotes here, listeners, evidence.
He is.
Like where people have been to her grave and just recorded silence and then turned up the volume, and they claim they can hear her naming the people that killed her.
Oh, right, yeah. What?
Yeah.
Well, and the names are?
It's rubbish, obviously.
Yeah.
There's been probably about as many suspects in this as there were in the Ripper murders or the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
Hundreds of them, including persons of note,
whose
names have been put in the frame.
Yeah.
Folk singer Woody Guthrie.
Really?
Yep.
Bloody commie hippie.
Yeah.
Apparently, he sent some sexually explicit letters and things to a woman he was stalking.
Cool.
But, I mean, he was pointed the finger at, but he was exonerated pretty quick. So. But it didn't stop people trying to prosecute him for it. Orson Welles was a suspect.
Yeah, I must admit, I did think about...
he knows a good dramatic murder.
Yeah, I did think about Citizen Kane when you were talking about the sensationalism newspaper.
Yeah, exactly.
Selling newspapers.
Yeah.
Because Citizen Kane was a few years, not too long before that.
1941.
Ah.
5 years?
Yeah. So I honestly did think, the LA Examiner, I mean, they would have just wanted to sell newspapers anyway. It's mad, is it?
Well, it was a Hearst newspaper, and Citizen Kane was famously based on Hearst. So.
Right. Well, but anyway, sorry. Yes, Orson Welles.
Orson Welles, yeah, he was a suspect.
Gosh,
what has he got? History of being horrible?
They was making a movie called The Lady from Shanghai, and he used a load of mannequins, and he had them all cut up, and supposedly the lacerations match some of the injuries or something. But I mean,
right.
And apparently, Short claimed to her family that she was going to get a screen test for a movie, and they put two and two together. So. Okay, but that might not have been true anyway.
I'll bet you she'd be the quickest ex-movie star that ever ex.
But I mean, with the location that she was in and everything, I mean, it's a standard trope, isn't it, to find an attractive wannabe.
Yeah, of course.
Individual and say, yeah, I'm a movie producer. Just meet me at so and so, and we'll see how you know.
Yeah, exactly.
The story's been played out terribly many times.
Yeah. Orson Welles was working on Macbeth at the time of the murder, and even though the studio basically begged him to stay, he just left. He was gone for 10 months. And
Why?
he didn't finish the movie. He just, at the time of the murder, he then just suddenly left for Europe and he just stayed there for 10 months and didn't go back to finish the movie.
Right.
So,
Raising suspicion?
Well, yeah, someone gets killed and he's in the middle of the main film and he just leaves.
Right.
He leaves the country. And people say, that's interesting.
Well, I mean, it is quite interesting.
The day that they got the manila envelope of the newspapers was the day that he applied for a passport. Get them in the post office. Just saying.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, it's a load of extraordinarily coincidental
Okay.
guff.
There was a good deal of very strong action, including an effort to frame me on a criminal charge, which a policeman was good enough to tell me about, as sensational and silly.
There's hardly any Orsons these days, is there?
No, not really enough.
Name another Orson.
Morgan Mindy.
Calling Orson. Calling Orson. Yeah.
Come in, Orson.
Name another Orson.
How many Orsons? That's all the Orsons, I think.
Orson's Farm.
That's both of them.
Orson's Farm?
Yeah, it was.
Isn't that John
It's called
Orson?
US Acres, brackets, known as Orson's Farm, outside the United States.
Oh, there you go. That's why I'm calling it Orson's Farm.
So one more suspect was Bugsy Siegel.
Yeah, right.
I wondered who you were going to say then.
But he was
Bugsy Malone.
wrong.
He was a wrong one.
What year? What stage? Las Vegas was created by then, wasn't it? In the sense of it was a big.
Well, no, it was.
thing.
No, not at all. Because it was
47.
47. It was, but at the time, Bugsy Siegel would have been mostly concentrating on building the Flamingo,
Right.
and therefore wouldn't have had time to be sawing women in half.
Yeah, quite. Yeah.
Not to mention, he was.
Mind you, he would have known people who could have.
Yeah, I mean, he was 1947 was the year he was shot. But 6 months later, after this one. But he was very much occupied with Virginia Hill, who was from another mob.
Right.
And he was, like I say, he was too busy spending millions of dollars of mob money on building a hotel.
Of course, yeah. Why would he have been accused?
Well, he was a mobster out of LA, so I mean, he's a criminal.
Yeah.
So he must have done.
He's a criminal. Yeah. Right.
Must have been him.
Yeah, it's a violent killing.
Yeah.
It's the mob.
It's not a big. It's no bigger leap than Orson Welles or Woody Guthrie.
No. Do people generally know? It's probably more an LA thing, isn't it? I was going to say, do people generally know about the mysterious intrigue of that case? I'm talking about people in America. You know, Jack the Ripper is a global.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's famous for arguably two things. One, the horrible nature of the murders,
Yes.
and two, it never being solved, which in this case is the same.
It is horribly brutal and hideous.
It's been described as one of the most brutal and culturally enduring crimes in American history. It's one of the most infamous, according to Time magazine, they said it was one of the most infamous unsolved cases in the world.
Murder of the year.
Wow.
Time Murder of the Year.
Well, there was a person of the year.
Yes, there was, yeah.
Man of the Year. Wasn't it Saddam Hussein Man of the Year in Time magazine?
I think it was, yeah.
Trump was.
Was he?
Yeah, like barely 4 years.
Trump was, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's Elon Musk, is he?
Yeah, him, Trump, Saddam Hussein.
Interchangeable.
Yeah.
Is time just like
Saddam Hussein got the key to the city of like Chicago.
time out?
Yeah, something like that. Adolf Hitler was nominated for Nobel Peace Prize.
What year though?
Like
Yeah,
3. Did he take over?
Well, he was elected into position.
He was when he only got 20% of the vote.
That's better than most
He
politicians.
was appointed by Hindenburg. Anyway, there you go. Not the Zeppelin president. Right, that went off the rails, but
Let's not mention the books because we'll be here all day.
Okay, let's not mention the books.
You haven't mentioned a couple.
We can mention a book.
Okay.
James Ellroy,
Uh-huh.
the novelist, crime novelist. In 1987, he wrote a book called The Black Dahlia.
What's that all about?
Well, it's mostly no relation to this story.
Is it really?
Oh, right. No, okay.
It's very, very...
I was going to say, is that the most popular? But
So is it just...
It's about as loose as it can get without falling off the subject completely.
Blimey.
But they did make a film about it, a film adaptation of the book, which Brian De Palma directed. But neither the book or the movie really bear a great deal of relation. They just used the name in order to sell the book and the movie.
Okay. Yeah.
And then there's other accounts, like really, really heavily fictionalized. Mena Suvari played someone based on Elizabeth Short in an episode of American Horror Story.
Okay.
But basically, there's lots of things that are incredibly loosely based on it, and then there's loads and loads and loads of books and documentaries. But there's not been a huge amount.
Right.
Yeah, lots of books that are exposés on who done it.
Yeah, and that's
none of
the
them
thing.
pointing at the same people.
Matt, mostly the books and the docs are trying to say who it was, even though nobody knows. Your classic unsolved story, and then they go, in this new tell-all book, we reveal who really done it.
Yeah.
Do you though? Do you though, really? And inside it says, no. We don't know, probably.
But it could have been.
Could have been. Could easily have been this person, or, Orson Welles. That's all for this time. If you want to know more about what we've discussed over the course of this episode, just Google it or something. You can see daily true crime updates on our Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. You can email us, or you can support the show with a PayPal donation. And links to all of those are on our website at truecrimediary.co.uk. Don't forget to send us a review or post one in your podcast service if you can, and all 5-star reviews will get a shout out on a future episode. Join us next time when we'll be similarly discussing and digressing on another event in true crime history. Until then, my thanks to Jed and Rue. My name's Mark, and we'll see you on the next date in our True Crime Diary.